Yo, 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 what is going on, CoD Familia? It is your boy BN, aka Mr. Kingdom Builder, and yes, yet again, we are delivering banger after banger. Because today we're going to be talking about a number of things. One, what has happened with Satoru and Nephisto's account, and where did they go from Kingdom 5? Two, the kingdom that they entered, what positions do they have? Three, what did senior leadership from their new kingdom have to say about timelines and how just everything played out? And four, some information that has been posted by the new R5 of Noir, Boo, and us just connecting some timelines overall, because some of these are really illuminating, let's just say. And it almost makes me feel sadder, more sad, for the people that have migrated to Kingdom 5 and Noir, knowing the things that we kind of know now, and I guess have known for a little while. And again, we'll kind of leave everything else up to you. As always, if you enjoy the content, make sure you throw us up, because it helps out a lot. So let's start off first by taking us down memory lane just a little bit. So this was a Alliance Mail screenshot that we have, just to kind of set some of the stage. So this was by Noir, assumed to be around December 23rd. After careful consideration and allowing enough time to be certain, we are officially announcing that our R5 Satoru has been unreachable and has not logged into the game for an extended period. This is not the first time Sato has disappeared, but given that he's missed today's main row event, something he's always prioritized above all, we have decided to assume he will not be returning to the game or Noir. All indications suggest he is dealing with personal matters IRL, though we have no concrete details. We understand this news is difficult and want to be transparent about what we know and have planned moving forward. Leadership has been as in the dark, keyword there, as everyone else regarding Sato's intentions, and we wanted to avoid any premature decisions or miscommunication. And I had said back when we read these mails a while ago that this was well done overall from the team to put something out and kind of get ahead of it instead of being behind it. And there's two things that I think stick out here. Number one is the fact that they address that this was not Sato's first time being unreachable, and also that he has always prioritized row, and so the fact that that wasn't prioritized this go around is a big indicator. Number two is that their management team was in the dark about that, meaning that he never said anything to them. We're going to circle back to that, because to me that's pretty wild. Then let's get to the next one, which is a message from, or I should say a mail, not a mail, but an announcement that was stated by Sato himself, presumably on the Noir Discord. And this was assumed to be on December 23rd, within a day or two, or within a day, if you will, right, based on when this was sent. I don't write long goodbye. Real life happened. I need to focus real life for a while. How long is a while? We don't know. Move forward with the current leadership team. It's pretty direct. Been an honor to be your leader for multiple seasons. You can message me in Discord, not in game. I'm not selling my account. Now, he did mention that in another mail that he was going to reach out to the people that migrated in and apologize. He also had a little bit more of a lengthy response. I believe it was probably in a chat, not necessarily in a announcement channel on Discord. We showed that off, I think, in the video yesterday. So again, there was a little bit more there that he did take time to kind of go out and just provide a little bit more context. However, the key part we're going to focus on here is real life happened. I need to focus on real life for a while. Let's now get to where Satoru is now, along with potentially Nephisto's account, which is in EDS. This is Kingdom 96. And you can see Nephisto's account has been renamed to Satoru, and Satoru's account has been renamed to Shin. Both are in EDS. Members, I don't believe they are in an officer position from what I saw. And here's a screenshot from 96 on my 96 Scout where you can see Satoru's there. Now, we're going to touch on a number of things after we connect some more dots, but I want to share an announcement that was done presumably on the Noir Discord after their town hall meeting this past Friday. And this was something that I want to point out Boo had sent me. And so I'm just going to start reading the top, and then we'll scroll this up. So he says, we discussed the shiitake mushroom storm that befell us and the lessons learned. This is a long read. Feel free to skip if you're not curious on Boo's assessment. There's a little bit more here than was actually said at the town hall. Sato, was the greatest strategist in the game, but he lacked communication and empathy skills, which ultimately allowed and fueled all following events. I mean, I would argue based on some of the announcements I've seen, some of the conversations that I guess I've briefly had with Sato, but really probably more so going off mails and what's been said, that are you saying that there's some soft skill opportunity there? I mean, okay, you could sell me on that. His empowerment of Peak, who was a very smart and well-intended individual, was perceived by Strange's group as not earned for role merit, but instead just for e-dating. Now, I could care less who's dating who. But what I think is really important is if one, does the dating affect the relationship, right? You guys know that saying, like, don't shiitake mushroom where you eat, right? Or poopy where you eat, if you will. And often if you're working at a company, right, you'll probably go through some form of, if they do training or anything, or sometimes they'll have you, agree to terms, or they'll at least mention it in some capacity of, kind of interpersonal work relationships. And I'm sure you've probably heard things like that mentioned in your life on, again, it's up to each person to decide on their own. And my only thing is, like, if you are dating, does that affect what's happening in the business? Does that affect what's happening in the alliance? That's the only time I really would find that it would be relevant. However, the part here that we'll focus on is that it was perceived by Strange's group as not earned for the role merit, right? So let's go in, because I think the next sentence really dives a little bit more there. Peak wanted to improve many things, but the assumptions already made, in combination with possible lack of tact, resulted in people feeling their boundaries as leaders were passed and bad blood snowballing into a mass exodus. So let me explain something to you, because I can tell you I have had this happen to me firsthand in a number of my jump projects in different kingdom builders. What it sounds like, now again, if this is accurate or not, I'm just going to explain this in a little bit more layman terms. Basically, let's say you have a number of R5s that have been there for multiple seasons. R4. A new R4 joins. This new R4 maybe is or is not perceived, based on how this is written and based on what the ex-R4s in Noir have stated, for those that have said something publicly. To me, it feels as though Peak either recently joined Noir in Kingdom 5 or was just like a non-contributing member and then all of a sudden kind of got elevated into an officer position. Because you usually wouldn't have this kind of response to a new officer joining if that officer or if that player is already contributing either to the Alliance and or to the Kingdom in kind of an officer in training capacity. Right? That's kind of where I go, because I've seen this happen in projects I've been a part of where I've seen players that have contributed and they have been so worthy of being an officer. It's just a matter of, okay, when are we gonna find an alliance that can fit them in, or are we just gonna give them kind of an elevated position if all the officer spots are full? Are we gonna expand the officer team and now do some kind of like 12-hour rotation? Whatever it may be. And then there's the difference between players who are not putting forth any contribution, but then they get elevated into a position, and then you have a number of people in the Alliance at times who are wondering, well, who's this person? How did they get there? Why are they bossing me around now? Right? Because you have to imagine, if you have a number of officers that have been there, which I imagine this R4 team was there from season 1, 1+, and then beyond, right? Depending on maybe when they got to those positions, but they were there for multiple seasons. There's a level of comfortability and familiarity with the player base in the Alliance and those officers, right? And you could argue there's a level of trust and respect as well. So when these officers reach out to them, they know, okay, hey, they're reaching out to me for something. But sometimes you might get an officer who reaches out to you and you don't know that they're an officer. And then they're like, well, who are you? Why are you you know what I mean? It's just like those things can lead to miscommunications, and sometimes they can even lead to players not responding to newer officers when they reach out, because potentially there is not that trust or loyalty or respect factor that has been built up over a period of time, right? And this kind of goes into how you ingratiate yourself when you join a team as kind of the newbie or just the new person. And based on what I'm hearing, it sounds to me, in one theory, or the most likely theory, is that Peak was new. may not have had as much time in the alliance as the current officers, which again, that can always happen. There's nothing wrong with not having enough time. But then joins the officer team and immediately wants to start making changes or asking questions or wondering why we're not doing this or why we're not doing that, or, hey, why don't we implement this? Or, hey, let me go to Sato and ask, hey, is it cool if I run this? Okay, yes. Yeah, Peak, that's cool. You can go ahead and run it. But then maybe there's no communication with the other leadership team. So then maybe Peak's kind of off doing her own thing, or maybe then Sato says something later, or the officer team finds out after maybe some players reach out. I mean, who knows, right? But what this all boils down to is kind of having a system, an appropriate communication line, and steps that you would take where if you are coming into a new situation as an officer to an existing team, it should really be first and foremost about learning the role, doing everything you need to do that is required of you at minimum, and then trying to build relationships with the other officers, right? Maybe that's joining VCs. Maybe that's enjoying some, friendly socialization in some of the officer text channels. Maybe that's going out and playing in hosting events or organizing events or leading events with other officers. Doing things where you can build rapport and relationships with these people, right? While you're doing all your minimum things. And then maybe start off by tackling one thing at a time. Again, I don't know. Did Peak try to tackle multiple things at a time? Was it two or more things? Those are things we're not sure. But what we do know is that this is not the only time that we've heard this from what the feedback has been given in regards to Peak. And I want to point out that even though I'm saying Peak, we're really just talking about officers in general from this situation, because I think this is a fantastic learning opportunity for any and all officers, right? That you might find yourself in this situation. There are kind of right and wrong ways to go about how you involve yourself. And there's so many similarities between real workplace environment and what you would do online in the game, because you're basically on an online work environment, right? That's the only difference here, is that you just can't see someone, you can't shake their hand, so to speak, right, unless you guys go do a meetup. Let's continue. And I digress. So all that was needed, and I want to point out is, like, if you approach things in this way where it says we're past in some way, so people feeling that their boundaries as leaders were past and bad blood snowballing, you also have to consider how your actions as someone new who's coming in, especially into an officer position, can affect the current existing officers. You don't want to do something, whether it's intentional or not, that would create or generate bad blood, right? There's always good and better ways to go about stepping or taking the appropriate steps to kind of get to what you want to get to, right? It's kind of the same thing as like when you see people that are giving suggestions or feedback saying, hey, this game sucks, add this in, it will be better. That's not the best way to go about you giving feedback and or constructive criticism to try and elicit a positive response from the developer, right? So again, okay, let's continue. So we have all that was needed was better communication and better effort from all sides to show respect and to be open about their thoughts and intentions. Again, I think that's pretty accurate, at least with, again, how that's worded. Everyone involved had a duty to the people of this alliance to try to make it work, but it does not look like that gave it the effort you all deserved. They all shut down and all eventually exited, with us now left to pick up the pieces. And to be fair, from what the XR4 leadership team of NOIR stated was, it just felt like it wasn't like, one thing happened and then they were just all out. From what they made it seem, well, from what they explained was that this was something that happened over a period of time. How long? Again, I don't have an exact timeline there, but I do know that it wasn't something that was just a one and done occurrence. It was something that kind of was going on for a while. To make matters worse, both the Strange Group and Satoru, after their exits, have tried to sow doubt into our remaining members about the future here without their leadership and told people to join TFS. Interesting. I will let you all make your own thoughts about the type of people these were. Now, again, if there's screenshots there, that's one thing. Our own leadership's takeaways from this reflect what should have been obvious. Treat each other with respect, over-communicate, be transparent, make all possible efforts to deliver for the Alliance. And I think that based on this announcement, or part of it, post-Town Hall, covers a lot of things, right? Depending on how many of those things, again, you want to either believe or not. I do think that there are some trending areas and with some consistencies here that we've heard before. Again, I think the stuff with about like the leaving, obviously we'd have to see some screenshots there. However, now let's get into something that Boo had sent here on the NOIR Discord, right? So he says here, I'm hearing Satoru is still messaging people to leave us. If he contacted you and you don't mind, please send me screenshots of his attempts. I, for one, would be very interested to see some screenshots. If Satoru from the Shin account or from the Satoru, aka Nef's account, has messaged anyone in NOIR, contacting them to leave and maybe what those messages look like. Along with, if there's anyone that from Strange's group that had reached out where they initiated. Now where you ask, completely remember, it's totally different if you are the one who's reaching out and saying, okay, hey, I'm interested in just looking for other options, and you reached out to anyone else, whether it was one of these two people or anyone else for that matter. Now, I will say this, it is a slippery slope depending on how you view things. On one side, if Strange's group and or Satoru reached out to members of NOIR and said, hey, if you are interested in leaving, just know there's a spot for you here. I don't necessarily think that is the worst thing. Some people will just say that that is blatant poaching, and they're very much against that. And it really has to be that person reaching out to them if they're interested in leaving. And then there's the other side of it, where it's more like aggressive poaching and downing, if you will, where you are still speaking bad about the people that are currently there as a way to kind of add fuel on the fire to try and get people to leave. That, I think, is pretty egregious. Even if the people there... Now, again, if there is some... I will give a small asterisk here, which is that if the people that have stepped up into power have been known, or if they are currently doing things that have just been considered shady, maybe just not good practice, I could at least slightly understand it from that perspective. However, I do like to believe and lean a little bit more on the side of that kind of tact, that kind of tactful, that kind of approach, to me, very much leans on the side of egregious for the most part. Right, let me state. Let's continue now. If he I will be doing an interview with BN in the future to expose how not only he did damage to the Alliance, quit on and abandoned it, and now he's trying to just... Okay, thank you. I'll be right there. Right, so, and this is something I had reached out to Boo about. I said, look, man, I would love... Because initially, I had reached out to Satoru about all this, and I should say specifically about the whole interview portion, where I had reached out and I had asked and said, man, listen, I would love to sit down. And keep in mind, there was at one point in time where he was interested in doing it. It just took so long for me to hear a reply back. And eventually it kind of got to this point where, I started covering things that were happening in NOIR and about NOIR. And I imagine at that point, it probably just put a sour taste or something right in his mouth. And so being able to sit down, I've always wanted to be able to sit down with Satoru and their leadership, right, back when Strange and a number of them were still there, just to kind of talk about how the alliances was ran, what does everyone do, what's their philosophy, right? Again, very similar to what I've done with other alliances, right? I think I've done an EIS one, we've done one with TFS, and I think a few others, and I love being able to go and highlight the alliances and kind of give them, some publicity, if you want. Now let me get to some parts here that I'm going to talk about and this I think is very important. And so if you've made it this far, thank you. You are going and about to be rewarded. So I had reached out to the EDS senior leadership. Now, who is senior leadership there? Well, it's Pradat, Mert, Brosian, Galacta, and Heidi. So I've reached out to everyone. Mert has kind of been the point of contact or point person for EDS and Kingdom 96 that also filled out our Kingdom survey. And so I reached out to Mert. Mert told me, hey, man, it's no problem. You can mention my name. I'm fine with being transparent. Let me point out, right, this is nothing against 96 or EDS, but I was just asking to try and fill some holes in, some gaps here. And I had asked, I said, okay, well, when did... If you're okay sharing, when did Satoru contact? Or did you guys reach out? How did that play out? So the answer was, we reached out to Satoru, given everything that was going on, to see if he might have been interested in migrating. So it was just an initial ask. The conversation, from what he stated, took place on December 28th, and everything was pretty much agreed upon within about 12 hours. Satoru responds and says, yeah, I'm down to come. Right, probably says, can I bring Nef's account? They probably say yes, because obviously his account's there. The important part to take away here, I think, is the timeline. So from Satoru's initial message here, that was on the 23rd, expected to be on the 23rd from what I've been told, 5 days later, is contacted about migrating out, and then decides to migrate out. All while, at this time, saying that, hey, real life has happened, I need to focus on real life. Now, could maybe everything have been solved in 5 days in real life? Okay, sure, maybe. What I will say is, and I think some people will lean on the side of skepticism. And where I align with this is, after everything that's happened, and keep in mind, it's not just this. You have to really compound everything from not communicating with leadership to let you know what's going to happen, to let them know what is going to happen in the future, to skipping and missing row, which you've always prioritized, to all of the officers in the alliance, not knowing what's happening, but more importantly, not being contacted. 4 is that you skip the KVK, which you didn't have to skip the KVK. Right? Didn't let anyone know that you were going to skip the KVK, apparently, from what we've been told, right? From even some of the current officers. Now, that doesn't mean everyone didn't know, but some people didn't know. Number 5, you allow migrants to come in without really telling them what the plans were on skipping the KVK, on stepping down, on basically the alliance kind of being in a state of flux and turmoil until things, stabilize, which hopefully they are now. And I wish the best for the current players there, because I don't think anyone wants to be in a situation where you have a dreadful level of uncertainty. And then, to round it all off at number 6, you migrate out 5 days after. It just... I will say this at minimum. It's not a good look, is how I view it. And however else anyone else takes it, right, that's up for each of you to decide. I just feel that it kind of sucks. And I would have to feel that some people would have to be hurt by such actions. And I say all of this because, to me, the easiest solution is just communicating with your team. Like, I don't see anything wrong with, listen, Satoru's like, man, there's a lot going on. Like, if he's thinking in his mind, there's a lot going on right now. I just don't want to do the R5 thing anymore. Okay, no worries. Just go tell your officer team. This is such a simple conversation. Now, again, you have to go out and have the conversation, of course. And does that fall into some of the kind of lacking of soft skills, right? Or communication and the empathy part that Boo had mentioned? Does that go with that? Or is that unrelated? To me, it is that simple of, I just don't want to be R5 anymore, right? I just want to let the officer team know in advance. I'm happy to help transition, and I'll be here until that transition finishes, and I'll help you guys find a new lead. I'll send a mail out so everyone knows, like just doing things that you would do if you are going to step down from a high-level position, which you have as an R5 of an alliance. And this just falls to me as multiple opportunities here that could have been taken that weren't as an R5 of an alliance when you decide you want to step down and you want to transition out. Because there's nothing wrong with that. But there are right and wrong ways to go about doing that, I very much believe. And so then we get to the next parts, which is Merck confirmed with me, because I had asked him, I said, hey, listen, because we've heard, like, again, Tiny, I've talked to Tiny about this a little bit, and a number of other people as well in the CoD VC on the Discord, where people have kind of debated this idea of, well, okay, do you bring Neff's account in, or do you bring 10 to 12, 100 mil accounts in, right? Now, in Rock, once your account gets past 150 mil, you count as 150 mil. So what this means is that if you're taking the top 300 player power, and that is determining your kingdom power, as you add all of those up, is there the possibility that if you exceed 150 million in COD, that it could be the exact same thing? There is a real possibility. Is it confirmed? I don't know if I've seen that confirmed anywhere. I part of me feels like they might have mentioned something at some point somewhere, but I just can't recall in this moment. And so Mert tells me that this is kind of how they're operating under. And it's one of the reasons why they've been able to remain so lean and thin, where even after Satoru and Nephisto's account came in, they're still crowded. They didn't go to full status. So does that mean that maybe there's some truth to this? Possibly. I personally would like to either see it tested more and or just confirmed by someone from the CoD team, because if that's the case, then it doesn't really matter if you bring in someone who's over 150 mil, because they're only ever going to count as that. The next thing that I want to state is I know Mert had mentioned that they had kind of offered him coming in as a way to kind of get away from politics. Could that also have been a reason for Satoru joining and, more importantly, leaving the war, as he just didn't want to kind of be surrounded by all of that anymore? I did reach out to Satoru, and I had asked, and was basically kind of just met with a non-response, if you will. And because my thought is, well, what was the reasoning behind, right? Did you really, because I think I had asked something to the effect of, were you able to satisfy everything and resolve everything in your real life? Or was this just an excuse that was used so that way you could step down and leave? And I just asked flat out. And so, yeah, again, it was a non-answer, essentially was the response that I got. But now, given that he's there, and again, I wonder kind of what's going on with, and I'm sure that's the other question some people might ask, is what's going on with Nephisto's account, right? Is he running that? Was it gifted? Is someone else just playing that account? Is Neff playing that account himself? Right? Those are, I guess, kind of up in the air, right? I have heard from some people saying that Sato has the account now. It may have just been gifted to him. But again, I don't have anything confirmed, at least publicly at this moment, that has been stated somewhere or has already been said. And that's it, really, for me, man. That's everything I got. So this is, again, it is wild to me. It is a lot. It is. I enjoyed covering this, though, right? Again, I want to point out at the end, man, I wish NOIR the best. I hope they stabilize. I hope everything is good. I hope the players continue to play there. And I hope that Boo and the current leadership team only have the best intentions. On the other side with Satoru, I wish him the best. I hope, again, if anything that we've said so far and or anything that we've heard thus far is true, I hope it is that he enjoys being a member. And if it's just not wanting to be a part of management anymore, that he has a great time in EDS and in 96. I've only had good interactions with the EDS team and with Mert. And yeah, I mean, that's it. I'd love to hear what you guys think on everything. So let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. As always, until next time, that is going to do it for me. We'll catch you later.